and it looked like it was running on DOS, right? So the technology they were using was so antiquated, and they were complaining to us like, man, I really wish I could offer this bet, like, but my service provider isn't letting me do it. And we're like, what do you mean? Like, they're just like, well, they're not going to build the technology for us, so we can't offer these other bets. And we were just like, well, that doesn't make sense. And so that's when Evan and I really went back to the, I guess, chalkboard, whiteboard, and really started figuring out, okay, like, there's people in the industry that want to offer these bets. There's consumers that, like myself, that want to take these bets, but there's no technology supporting this. So how can we start figuring out how we can price this stuff? And so that was the biggest hurdle, is how do we price and offer these things without, breaking the bank for the operator. They don't want to take esports bets because they don't want to have the risk there. And so that's when we came up with this self-setting odds solution.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Medallion XLN Podcast. Today, I'm here with Basch and Evan Fisher from Sparket, which is a betting software platform. As usual, if you're watching, make sure to like and subscribe. When you like our video, it spreads it to more people. And, today we're going to have a very interesting conversation because I'm not really familiar with betting and how that whole thing works. So hopefully we can learn a lot. So Basch and Evan Fisher, welcome to our podcast. How you guys doing today?
We're great. Thanks for having us on here.
Yeah,
awesome.
Doing well.
Awesome. Yeah, so Sparket is a betting software platform. What does that mean?
Great question. So at Sparket, we came up with that name from sports market. So we combined those words, got sports market, and our goal was to really add betting to pretty much anything. So with our social Betwork platform, we can let people bet on anything.
Okay. So we can already bet on anything, right? I can go down to the local casino and we can bet on like a ball game. We could bet on whatever is going on, wherever is popular. I know the Superbowl is coming up. So why do we need your software?
Well, I think, unfortunately, you can't really bet on anything, right? We can't bet on politics or the weather or reality TV shows. There's a ton of esports that people would love to bet on that they're unable to. And in fact, there's really only about, let's call it 20 sports that the current casinos offer actual odds on right now.
Oh, okay. So your software, is that like an app that I can download on the iPhone site and just bet on just random things?
Not quite exactly that simple. So we actually work with casinos and sportsbook operators as well as businesses to turn these things on. Unfortunately, it's a regulated industry here in the US, so it's not quite as easy as just flipping a light switch, but that is the goal long term, to be able to let people plug in our app and bet with their friends on anything. How many stairs are in your staircase?
Ah, that's interesting. And so as far as the app are you guys in competition with like what's one of the major ones that do fantasy football?
Yeah, you got FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM. Those are kind of the top three players, I think, right now.
So are you guys in competition with DraftKings?
So our goal is actually to have DraftKings use our software. So there's a ton of missed out demographics in sports betting right now. The charge is leading ahead in trying to acquire a new customer in each of these states for the traditional sports. But there's all these niche sports and opportunities that are getting missed out on by existing operators. Some of the things we mentioned, reality TV shows, we just had the Golden Globes. No one's betting on that in the U.S. right now. So, I mean, back when the whole Will Smith slap thing happened, that could have been a really fun bet that we could have had on the Academy Awards before. So I think there's lots of opportunities out there, and they actually attract new demographics outside of those traditional, NFL, NBA fans.
For sure. So let's go back to DraftKings. Like, why would DraftKings use your software as opposed to whatever they're already running? Like, what benefits do you provide that they can't do themselves?
Yeah, great question. And I think taking a step back, probably one thing to distinguish is typically when you bet on sports is you're betting against the house in what they call fixed odds. So when you're putting up your money, usually they show you like a minus 110 or a 110 thing. That's kind of so what that means is you're paying $110 to win $100. So they're charging you 10% and you're putting up your money against the house, almost like blackjack, if you're familiar with that. Our platform actually works where you're playing against all the other players in this pool of players. So very similar to a poker table where you're just playing against the other players. You're not betting against the casino. And so it's a much different structure. And because of that, that lets us price really anything and take a risk on any type of bet. Whereas because the current sports books, they're putting up their own $100, they might not want to take any bets that seem like they're going to lose because they're a casino and that's their job is to make money on their bets.
Okay. So it sounds like you're democratizing betting. So you're taking the power away from the central casino authority and you're democratizing it so that just a group of friends could just bet on, if the light's going to go out in their town or something like that. Just they can create just random bets. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. We still have to work with casinos and operators, which is why we're selling this technology to them because of the regulation. However, our goal is to kind of take that piece out of the equation for them so that they can just turn this on and start offering all sorts of new event types.
So the regulation, that sounds like a bit of a minefield. Could you tell me some of the challenges that you guys are facing with this software?
100%. And I think, with anything that is a state-by-state level instead of at a federal level, it always gets tricky because every single state has their own opinion. Let's start with Nevada, where it was legal to bet in sports forever. So they're kind of like the original gold standard. And all these other states are kind of starting as them as their kind of initial layer, but then they're building in different rules and regulations. Some states have already allowed esports betting. Some states haven't at all. Some states, let's talk interesting example in New Jersey and New York, which are right next to each other. You can't bet on college sports in New York, but you can just go right across the border to New Jersey and make those exact same bets. So even within the regulation, they're still trying to figure out their own best practices. This is really a little bit like a Wild West here where things are expanding. It's gone from being in one state in 2018 to 36 now and counting in just 4 years. So pretty massive expansion. And, I think the regulators are trying to figure this out as they go as well. I would say it's very similar to how, the cannabis industry has gone from being kind of taboo and banned to now all these states are turning this on and figuring out how to work with it the right way.
So what is the regulatory differences amongst each state? Because just the way America works, each state can create their own laws. So there's not like a federal type of law that everyone must abide by. So I'm sure you have to figure out how to, adjust the software to play in each state. How are you going about doing that?
Yeah, great question. And so thankfully there's companies out there that kind of help deal with this. So one of them in particular, Gaming Labs International, what they do is they certify software for regulatory purposes. So back in September, we earned our GLI 33 certification for sports betting. And so this will help us go into pretty much any state. Regulators see this as like the gold star. We already have all the reporting and system audits and checks in place to make sure there's no issues. And so this will help us when we go to regulators in each state say, look, we already have this certification. We're a legal group. You should help us turn this on, versus other people without that. They have to go through a whole regulatory process in every single state. So that's one way we're combating that. We've also been meeting with regulators already just to kind of get our names out there and get a feel for, what their take is. Some are much more conservative and others are more interested. In the end of the day, this is driving tax revenue to their state. So for them, this is a good thing longer term, as long as it's safe for consumers.
Okay. So based on what you've told me, it sounds like you're creating a software standard for the United States gambling system where any developer can plug into that API and take advantage of take advantage of all the progress that you've made as far as regulation. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, I want to say with like an asterisk in that you still do need to have some sort of license with the state to offer gambling. So yeah, I mean, anyone that has or is interested in having that license in that state, they can plug into our software and instantly turn this on.
Okay. Because there's a lot of new industries popping up. I think esports is becoming more popular among the younger generation. I know that I'm a millennial, so instead of watching football, like I like to watch people play Call of Duty online, and it kind of would be interesting to place bets on what team is going to win and just apply those same fantasy football rules to just different things that we're interested in, as opposed to just being limited to like the traditional like football, baseball, basketball type of bets. So very interesting.
Big gamer here myself, so love to hear that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, absolutely. So what other industries have you seen that this software is being incorporated or being embraced by?
Yeah, great question. So, I think outside of traditional sports and esports, there's a lot of reality TV, for one, that has a much different demographic of people engaging on those shows that easily could be turned on. We've done, some pilot programs where we did something for The Bachelorette, where people were guessing, people are going to get a rose, is anyone going to get slapped, or, is someone going to get a kiss on the show, things like that, to kind of engage that different demographic type and really turn that on. And then outside of that, I think there's a lot of, non-traditional sports and even minor league sports that are even the traditional kind of realm that could benefit from this. We were talking to a boxing group recently, and they're like, not quite at that pro level yet, but they still have a couple thousand people show up and watch their fights. And so this is something that they could turn on and engage with their audience more, collect data, and really just have more fun with the people that are watching this. And no one is offering that for them right now because, it's not a huge league, but it's still, it's 2,000 people, 1% of that's 20 people. You just got 20 people happy because they can now bet on their minor league boxing. And now you extrapolate that idea to all the different leagues and small groups out there, and, you're turning on a lot of volume. I know, speaking from someone that probably watches on Twitch, right, this stuff is happening 24/7. So there's, channels with 100 people, there's channels with 100,000 people. All of them could be engaging in that kind of way and really making all sorts of fun bets.
Okay. So as far as like the reality shows, and so how would well, I'm trying to think of it from like a business perspective, right? Like if any business could like tap into this software, like is it a possibility that the business, like let's say someone who hosts these boxing matches, could could the boxing match be the house and then place bets on your software and then get the percentages that the house would usually receive? I'm not really sure how the whole gambling thing works, but that sounds like a viable question.
No, that's a great question, and I think the answer is potentially. There's still that small regulatory piece there where they'd have to have some sort of agreement where they're a known entity for gambling. One thing to think about it as, like, if you're playing poker with your buddies at your house and no one takes a rake or commission and all the money just goes back to players, that's totally fine. But as soon as you start charging commission or you hire a dealer or it becomes almost like a professional thing, then you get in that whole Molly's game situation where it becomes an issue, right? So it's probably the same perspective there. We do offer free-to-play solutions as well, where people can play and win prizes. So that's another way we can start turning that on initially. They can get some sponsorship to provide prizes, and then we can start in that kind of way to roll it out, get data, and then work with regulators to turn them on for real, as you say.
Good. So, obviously gambling is ethically, a lot of people disagree with it, a lot of people agree with it. Where do you guys fall from your perspective ethically? How do you see your business?
I mean, obviously I'm a supporter of it. My background's in finance and stock market, and I've seen things that people are trading stocks on that I would say are almost more risk than gambling in the past, right? And they've created all sorts of financial derivative products to really, you can kind of bet on a company any way you want, right? You can short it, you can buy options, you can do all sorts of crazy derivative trades. And to me, I think that's just as dangerous out in the world as betting on a football team, where you have stats and data, and some of these companies that are public, you might not know anything about them, and they're misleading consumers with bad reports. All that stuff is out there in the world, and so to me, it doesn't seem any more harmful than some of the things I see in the financial industry, where in those cases they charge 0 fees for consumers versus gambling, they're charging 10+% for consumers. So really, who's getting the short end of the stick there is the consumers.
Right.
And I'll add a couple things to that. So our betting system specifically designed for smaller casual social bets. We're not trying to take large bets that would put somebody in financial difficulty. In fact, if somebody does that in the system, it moves the odds considerably against them because of the market-based odds system that we have. And then in addition, every event and bet type that we offer also has a free-to-play component where users can participate without actually gambling or risking any money. So we have a bunch of data mechanisms in place where people can do things as simple as confirming outcomes of events or predicting events on a free-to-play basis and not have to gamble to participate.
Okay. So as far as your software, how hackable is it? Is there a risk of someone getting access to all your users' data or even your users' funds and then transferring all of it to their personal bank accounts?
No, and that's why we went through the GLI, the Gaming Labs International certification that Aaron mentioned before. They vet that pretty seriously, and there's a list of standards that we have to comply to. We use the latest, AWS infrastructure. We encrypt all user data in a separate database. So everything is as secure as it could be in the current environment, and we haven't had any issues thus far.
That's good. So, going back to reality shows, why would people want to bet on The Bachelorette and who's going to win and different things like that? Is are you just gamifying all aspects of life, or what's the end goal here for this for this software?
Yeah, I think 2-part question there. I mean, personally, I'm a huge Survivor fan. Love that show. It's like the ultimate game where you're trapped on an island and have to compete physically and mentally. And I've been watching it for, I don't know, they're in 43 third season, I think. And, I talk to my friends all the time, like, hey, I bet you this guy's going to win. And and so I think there is a lot of that already happening, in WhatsApp groups and, side things happening already. But one of the problems that I encountered with Evan, we were from LA originally. We have our WhatsApp group where we're making bets and stuff, but all of us are Dodgers fans. And it's like, okay, well, I can't bet with anybody on this Dodgers game because all my friends are Dodgers fans. So you almost need this like Betwork, as we call it, to really kind of expand your web and connect with other people that are interested in that. And kind of the second question, I guess the short answer would be yes. I mean, I'm not trying to like gamify every single thing, like how many steps is it from my bed to the refrigerator or something like that. But, I think there's a lot of things that have the opportunity to have more, and that's missing. And, I think one of the things that we've seen with some of our pilots, for example, when we did a Superbowl pilot event, is we had a lot of participation from different demographics because we had bets that were much more fun and simple to understand. Like we did, what color is the Gatorade going to be at the end of the game? And, is the coin toss going to be heads or tails? And the length of the national anthem, where there's no barrier to entry to that, right? Like I don't need to know, okay, Cooper Kupp typically gets 80 yards a game and the over-under is at 82. It's like, you don't need to know anything. It's just like, I like green Gatorade, done. I'm going to bet that, right? And so I think it lowers the barrier to entry and takes away some of the complication of traditional betting. And then when you're playing with your friends, it makes it more fun, right? Like everyone plays in those Super Bowl square games where it's like, oh, you just pick a square for $1? Cool. And it's my wife's favorite game because she doesn't have to know anything and somehow she wins, right? So it's exciting for her and she gets to participate, and then it feels like, you're rooting for something. And whether it's, you're rooting for the Gatorade to be green or tails, it provides kind of more incentive to be involved.
Okay. So developers watching this who want to integrate your software into their application, what features can you kind of hype up that would entice them to really understand like why the SDK is so important?
Yeah, so imagine you have a betting system today and you're offering the traditional fixed odds, and that's what 99% of platforms out there have, where you're offering NFL football, you're offering other traditional sports, and you want to add a layer of this long tail of events to your platform to be able to increase your revenue, bring in broader demographics. We can integrate into your existing sportsbook API, and then you immediately are able to turn on this long tail of events within your existing sportsbook and offer those broader demographics. As Aaron mentioned, we use the self-setting odds, so you don't take any risk or exposure as the house on those new bet types that you're offering. And as mentioned before, we're all Gaming Lab certified, so from that perspective, we're secure and compliant with regulation.
And who is Gaming Labs? Like, is that like the big regulation body that you need to go through?
Yeah, they're like the gold standard for audit testing of gaming software internationally.
Okay, so they put your software through a series of different tests, which guarantees its security.
Yeah, like
exactly. Security and a lot of exactly geolocation, identity verification to make sure you're 21 plus, depending on the state. And then, in addition, there's the responsible gaming aspect, which you alluded to before, where people can set limits, deposit limits, wagering limits, things of that nature to make sure that gambling doesn't become a problem for them.
How can you guarantee that? Like, suppose they just create a different account. Like, is there a way around that?
That's where the identity verification comes in. So if you're creating an account, you have to provide your ID and then take a selfie on the spot. And then we use facial recognition technology to verify that you are the person in front of the phone. And so then if you set a limit, or if you have a limit in place by a regulator or an operator within your jurisdiction, that sets within the phone and within our system. And then if you try to create a duplicate account, we'll block it when you try to go through that identity verification process again.
So how much money do you think this entire gaming market is worth?
Yeah, great question. So we just looked at some data actually, and since the decriminalization in 2018 and this turning on to multiple states, there's been over 100 million of bets placed. So that's just in basically 3 years. And that's just within traditional sports. That's as states were turning on and coming online and, hadn't been on for a year. Like New York has been only a year now. And so I think, when the whole U.S. or the majority of the states are on, just on the traditional sports, you're going to have potentially up to like 50 billion, 100 billion a year of bets being placed. And then our software actually adds a layer to, some of the things you mentioned before, like Twitch streams that are happening 24/7 when there's no football going on. It's a Wednesday night, and so this gives people something to do. We think we can increase that by at least 50%. So bringing in on that 100 billion bets, we think we can bring on at least 50 billion more bets when you combine and add up all of these different bet types throughout the year.
Do you guys have a projection on how much percentage of the market this software could take? Do you have a projection on that?
We do, and actually, our goal isn't to take away from any market. So our goal is really to add to the market. So right now, if there's 100 billion of bets, our platform would really just add 50 billion more bets. It's not going to. We're not trying to cannibalize the industry. We're not taking it away. We're actually adding to it, and that's why we think we're going to be successful because our partners actually get value. They don't lose any value. Everything we do adds value to them because now all of a sudden they're starting to take action on esports that they never had at basically zero risk. So every dollar that comes through is just pure additional revenue.
Could you go into what the benefits of gambling are to the sporting industry?
I mean, I think it's entertainment and time spent, right? I think, if you look at people that watch football and how many people are watching football and then how many people are betting, there's a pretty high correlation. And so there's a reason it's one of the most watched sports in the U.S. is because a lot of it is to do with betting, right? I mean, even if it's like $10 on the line, you're probably going to stay and watch the end of that game to see if you're going to win another $10, as opposed to, if the game's over and it's like a blowout, it's like, whatever, I'm not going to watch this anymore because I already don't care. So I think betting keeps viewers engaged longer. And, it's like anyone that's played fantasy football or any of these fantasy sports, all of a sudden you have some player on your team from, like a team that you never paid attention to. And then now you're watching every game of that team because they're on your team in your fantasy league. So you need to watch that more. So I think it's the same idea with betting is if you have money on the line, you're going to pay attention more to it and engage further with that league or that sport.
Right. So I think an interesting correlation with the podcasting industry is that, when Joe Rogan was offered like $100 million for his podcast, it was because the length of the podcast allows the advertisers to put more advertisements in it, to have more advertising slots, right? And as opposed to like a 3-minute song, you can only advertise at the beginning and at the end of the song. And if you're advertising on every single song, people are going to get annoyed and probably use a different platform. So what I'm trying to figure out is is there a similar paradigm with gambling where it benefits the sport or the event because people are more invested in the outcome, so they're willing to stay there a lot longer? And if so, does that event directly benefit off the gambling or not?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I mean, it's in the end of the day, it's more screen time. We have spots on our screens for ads as well. Speaking of ads, so you're seeing an ad at the game, then you're looking at your phone at the bet, and you're seeing another ad there. So you're getting more revenue for the leagues because now more people are looking at it from that perspective. And then exactly to your point is I think people that are going to stay at these games longer and then they're going to have one more hot dog or one more beer. Or when they're watching on TV, they're going to see a couple more commercials through the break because they want to stay till the end of the game, or if it goes into overtime, right? Everyone loves that from the, team side, because that's another quarter now that people are going to watch. So I think, they all really synergize really well together.
That's interesting. So as far as are there any additional benefits to an event? Are there any additional benefits to an event to have? Because I see this gambling thing is maybe an umbrella, something that goes over the event while the actual event's going on, and people who are interested, they can kind of engage in this side attraction. So is there any additional events to this type of side attraction? I mean, additional benefits to the side attraction?
Yeah, I think, when you're working with the leagues, there's always some kickback to them too, right? So, for them hosting these events, however frequently, they're usually getting some revenue benefit as well, whether it's, merchandise or sponsorship or just a straight fee. There's usually, I think FanDuel and DraftKings are the official NFL sports books, and they paid millions of dollars to have that claim, but yet every other sports book is still placing bets on the NFL, right? So it's really just something the NFL is getting pure revenue out of, because they're saying this is the official sports book of the NFL.
Oh, that's interesting. So how did you guys get started? How did this idea come about? How did you get started? What's your expertise?
Yeah, I love that. So Evan and I have actually known each other since high school. Been playing in the same fantasy football league for, I think this was the 23rd season. So long time now. My background was actually in mathematics, statistics, got into finance, and was pricing all sorts of exotic vehicles like ATVs and jet skis and kind of obscure things that people wanted to finance. So a lot of that kind of fits well with how do you price obscure sports and coming up with the math and the algorithms for that. Evan's background is at Google. I'll let him share some of that himself, though.
Yeah, so before starting Sparket, I was at Google for 8 years in finance operations and product operations. So on the product side, it was in customer experience. So, when looking at this market, especially as it was a new market, we saw a lot of opportunities for some of the customer experience and gamification that had already hit other industries, such as the financial sector with products like Robinhood. And so when we saw that the Supreme Court overturned the federal ban on sports betting in 2018, Aaron and I started thinking about how we could start a business in this industry. And it took us a few years to ideate and get it up and running until we ultimately left our full-time jobs. But we saw the opportunity as it continues to expand to new states, new regulations come into play that allow more types of bets. And with that, and then our just passion for sports, as Aaron mentioned, and then passion for gaming as well, we knew that there'd be a great opportunity in this space.
So that's interesting. So you guys are, we got a mathematician and we got a finance guy. So, I want to delve into the mathematical aspects of this. So how did you come at this gambling thing from a mathematician perspective?
Yeah. I think, honestly, personal frustration, right? So Evan and I, like I said, we were trying to make bets on the Dodgers, and I'm a big esports guy and gamer, and watching guys play Call of Duty or whatever it is, and it's like, man, I wish I could just bet on this. I'm like, it's going on my side screen. Why isn't there a solution? And we actually have an amazing advisory network, and they introduced us to a client out in Vegas, U.S. Bookmaking. They were kind enough to take us into their back office and kind of show us, what they were currently doing. And so we saw, what looked like, a terminal from the 90s and Excel from the 90s, and it looked like it was running on DOS, right? So the technology they were using was so antiquated. And they were complaining to us, like, man, I really wish I could offer this bet, but my service provider isn't letting me do it. And we were like, what do you mean? Like, they're just like, well, they're not going to build the technology for us, so we can't offer these other bets. And we were just like, well, that doesn't make sense. And so that's when Evan and I really went back to the, I guess, chalkboard, whiteboard, and really started figuring out, okay, like, there's people in the industry that want to offer these bets. There's consumers that, like myself, that want to take these bets, but there's no technology supporting this. So how can we start figuring out how we can price this stuff? And so that was the biggest hurdle, is how do we price and offer these things without, breaking the bank for the operator. They don't want to take esports bets because they don't want to have the risk there. And so that's when we came up with this self-setting odds solution. So I think, as I mentioned before, it's, instead of betting against the house, like the blackjack, you're playing against the player. So every time a dollar comes in, the odds automatically update, get adjusted, and so that everything can be priced. And it's kind of what you see in horse racing, pari-mutuel style of betting, where every time people are making bets, the odds adjust up until the market closes, and then everything's fixed in time, and that's your bet and your payout. And so that's really important for things like esports, where there's no data on these players. Let's just say the new season came out, right, Call of Duty, and you don't have any data because it's a brand new game and map and all this stuff and new guns and all, right? And so someone just became a pro and now they're in this tournament, they win the tournament. Like, as the sportsbook operator, right, wearing that hat, you don't want to take that risk at all, because you're just going to get crushed, because you're going to give this guy 100 to 1 odds and he's going to win, and you're going to be paying out 100 times your money on all these consumers that bet on him. So that's where having this self-setting odds and pool style is really important, because if the market knows that this player is actually better and they start betting more and more and more on him, his odds will shift down to accommodate that, so that the pricing is actually reflecting what the market thinks. So very, very similar to how an exchange or stock market works, right? If all of a sudden everyone's selling Tesla because Elon Musk says something, right? The market is controlling that price, not the metrics on his earnings, right? So it works in that same capacity there, and that's kind of how that whole sports market Sparket name came to be.
That's where I was trying to get. That's where I was trying to figure out what makes this technology special. That's why we spent 30 minutes. I'm just asking all these random questions. I'm trying to figure out what makes it different, and this sounds like a winner. Because if I could just sum up what you just said, pretty much it gives people the ability to participate in a live market, and as more bets come in, then the market and the odds and all these different mechanisms update to reflect the current situation and the current group of people and all the money that's involved. So that's interesting. And I do talk to a lot of technologists and startups, and they are disrupting industries that haven't been touched by technology for years. And the banking system, for example, they still use a decades old programming language called COBOL, right? And no one uses it. No one wants to use it. But the banking systems, that's how they continue to transfer our funds. And that's probably why transferring funds takes about 3 days to hit your bank account from when you get paid. So that's a great disruptor. And is that what you described with Sparket? Is that a unique feature to the software, or do you see other companies using that feature?
Yeah, so I think what we're doing specifically is unique, and we do have our patent published, kind of protecting some of what we're doing with that. There are exchange-based sports books out there, and I still think I think ultimately our product is the most fair to consumers, right? If you start with like fixed odds, where when you take that bet, that's your number, right? If it's times 2, that's it. And then all of a sudden, you find out the star player's hurt, like too bad, you're stuck with those odds. And somewhat similar in an exchange where the price is always moving and meeting in the middle, but still once you accept that money, right? Once you click, trade on that stock, like you're locked into that price. Versus with our product, it doesn't lock in until the event starts. And so that creates the most fair bet for everyone, right? Because now, I was at, 2 times multiple. I just lost my star quarterback, let's say, and all of a sudden, my odds go up to 4 times, because that is what is more reflective of what the true nature of the outcome should be. And so, from a consumer, and especially as like our goal isn't like targeting professional sports bettors. We're really trying to get the novice and more relaxed player in here. That's what you want, is you want the most fair odds. And so that's what we're providing.
Yeah, that does sound. So over time, over the course of the event, the market and the odds and stuff is changing live, right? So yeah, that's different. So what's been the reception that you guys have been getting from casinos and traditional betting markets? Like once you explain this technology, like how have they been receiving it?
Yeah, we've had some folks that are now our clients, so they obviously are excited about it, and we're integrating with Red Rock Resorts out in Nevada. They're, I think, the 5th largest casino group in the U.S., and you can check out their ticker on the NASDAQ. It's RRR. So we are working with them right now to integrate our software into their technology. They have 21 casinos, 1 million plus players. So there's been a lot of positive reception. We have a couple other casino clients at smaller places as well. And then, we have had, just to be frank with you, the complete opposite, where we've met with the CEO of top casino group in the U.S. here, and they've made their money on fixed odds betting for the last 20, 40 years, and they don't want to do anything different, right? That's just like you mentioned with the banks. That's how they run it. They're making money that way, and they're not really interested in changing that. And so we've seen both sides, where people are less open for innovation and opportunity, and other sides where people are like, yeah, this is great, this is all incremental value, like I wish I had this yesterday. And so kind of faced both sides of that.
So do you think with those establishments that are resistant to this kind of technology, do you think there is going to be a point where they won't have a choice but to embrace it? Like what is this disruption so significant that it will disrupt their income stream if they don't embrace it? Or do you think they'll be fine?
That's what they're afraid of. Obviously for them, if you can offer fixed odds and a 10% hold on every single type you make a bet. I mean, imagine you're going to go buy $1,000 worth of stock, and someone says, cool, you need to pay me $100 in processing fees. Right now it costs me $0 to trade $1,000 worth of stock. So to me, that's absurd that the sports books are getting away with that and charging such a high amount. And of course that's why they don't want to change, because they're making 10+%. On parlays, it's like in the 25% range on these bets. So yeah, why would they want to offer something where we can come in as low as like 2% fee? I mean, and still make money. And so of course they don't necessarily want that for the mainstream consumer. And that's why our goal really is to bring this on for the other sports in the short term. We're not trying to combat the giants in the room quite yet here. We're trying to prove our case, and we'll get there.
Right. So if, like you mentioned, the traditional ways of betting, they charge these enormous fees, while your software allows you to charge like a lot smaller fees. So wouldn't the market eventually move towards your software as opposed to the traditional way of doing things? Or is the gambling market less like technologically like aware and more interested in just gambling? Like,
I think it's getting there. I mean, if you 3 years ago, even 4 years ago, right? I mean, the only way you could gamble was like you go get a paper ticket from a kiosk or a guy in the back of the casino. You have to hold on to this paper ticket for months, and if you bet way out in the future, and then you got to come back to Nevada to go redeem this ticket and get your cash. And now all of a sudden we have online betting. In the last 4 years, that's all changed, and it's still being controlled by these sportsbook operators. And so I think it's going to take some time to get there, but I think eventually, right, like we saw with Robinhood in financial markets, where they said we're going to offer trading for no fees, and it really forced every single other financial institution to make that same offer to consumers, or they would be missing out. And now pretty much every, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, they all have those offers available. And so I think, there's probably some resistance at the top level from the sports books, because they know as soon as that happens, they're all going to have to do something to compete. So they're all kind of agreeing to play this game of like, well, let's all keep it at 10+% here.
Oh, so there's like a lot of consolidation at the top to kind of maintain the system and maintain their income stream. But eventually they're going to have to budge.
Yeah, I mean, if, thinking back at that same example with the stocks, right? If they were able to get $100 per trade, they're going to take that as long as they can. And then someone comes in and it's like, oh, it's only 50. It's only 10. And then eventually it gets down to 0, right? I think you're going to see some of that happening in the sportsbook world, or, consumers are going to be upset. I mean, again, it seems crazy that I can buy $10,000 worth of stock and pay no fees. I have to pay $1,000 to trade $10,000. Like, the gamble, betting on a sport is really the same as a financial transaction there. I think some of the stock bets you can make are arguably more risky than sports betting in some cases.
So have you guys launched? Are you in the launch phase, or are you still in the fundraising stage?
Definitely in both of those phases. In the fundraising stage, we've raised about $1 million to date, kind of angel investments and friends and family, and we're looking to raise a more traditional round with a firm here coming up. And as far as the product goes, like I said, it's out there, it's live. We're integrating with Red Rock Resorts right now, their major platform, but we are live with a couple other casinos and groups that we've worked with. We've done things like private member guest golf tournaments at country clubs. We've done esports tournaments. We did a drone race before. So we've tested this on a lot of different settings outside of just the traditional work with the casino front.
So for people who are looking to invest, like, are you doing like a public crowdfunding round? Or
yeah, so glad you asked that. We're actually live right now on Start Engine, which is Kevin O'Leary is the face of that product, and I think there's about 12 days left in our campaign up there. We've raised about 175 on that. So yeah, we're out there in the world. Please come check us out and be part of the social Betwork.
Very cool. So with the Super Bowl upcoming, do you see any opportunities to get out there and maybe because you're live right now, right? So do you see any opportunities or to get out there and take advantage of this huge event?
Absolutely. And with some of our partners, we're already running some football contests, so that'll roll into the Super Bowl, which is great. We just did a partnership on more of the free-to-play side with a company called Prize Out, which is pretty cool. It lets you play for free, but then after you earn enough tokens in the system, you can actually cash out for things like Amazon gift cards or mobile for gas or Chick-fil-A. They kind of have a lot of national brands out there where you can actually cash out some of your free-to-play points for these real money gift cards. So we're going to be hosting our own Super Bowl event where you can make some bets on our system, and we're giving away $1,000 worth of prizes on there to test out some of the new features since it's a brand new integration for us.
Yeah, the URL for that is, I'm sure we'll send it out, but it's www.sparket.app. SPARKET.app.
Okay, absolutely. And so that's the URL for the website. Do you guys also have an app on the iPhone or Android?
It's all web app based, and that's nice because we, no download is required. And then with all our partners at events or things of that nature, they can just scan a QR code and be brought straight to the web application without needing to download anything.
That's great. So you mentioned tokens earlier. Now these tokens, they're not cryptocurrency tokens, right?
No, not yet. At some point, I think have some blockchain type ideas. Some of our original ideas did come from blockchain technologies, but we haven't gotten into that too deep. They're just free to play tokens on our wallet system here. Nothing tied to any blockchains at the moment.
Nice. So, are you staying away from blockchain because of regulation, or is it just not like you just don't want to implement that as of yet?
I think, time, programming, software development time. As mentioned, right, we got this product certified with the Gaming Labs company. We already had a ton of software lift to get that done. As we build out some of our rewards features and some of our items that Evan had mentioned previously, like our prediction and event confirmation, that's where we want to tie in some of the blockchain features for rewards and kind of tracking that system. We have a whole piece in place where, if you're like the first person to confirm an event outcome accurately, right, we're going to reward you more heavily, almost like being the first person on Reddit to post in the thread, but this is actually tied to a result. And so we want to incentivize our players to provide data into our system and help us confirm event outcomes to help expand some of this industry. And so that's where some of our crypto blockchain ideas will eventually come into play.
So when you say you want your customers or clients, users to provide data. Now, does this data go into kind of like a prediction algorithm? Do you guys use any sort of artificial intelligence in this?
We do. I've done a lot of machine learning in my past here from being a stats guy. And so I think it's kind of on two folds. And when we talked earlier about how the market works and trying to get to that best price for the consumer, part of having prediction data can actually help us do that. So one of the pieces is, as a free-to-play element, anyone can come in and make predictions. And, let's say you're really good at predicting NFL. We actually track that and we rank you. And so you get almost like a credit score in our system for being really good at predicting basketball. And then that's something like you could brag about, like, hey, I'm in the 99th percentile at, NFL predictions or NBA predictions or whatever it is. You guys should follow my predictions. And so that actually adds a whole other layer of how people can participate and really make themselves almost like an influencer in that space, because they're, really good at predictions. People want to follow you. Second level of that is, after the event happens and something like, a non-traditional sport, gathering that data could be challenging. So we want to incentivize users to provide that event outcome data. So let's say you're watching an esport and some guy on Twitch is, they're going to get more than 10 kills in the game, right? And so you're watching, you see that, okay, he just got to 11. You can confirm that data and be a part of our system. And similarly, we're tracking that and kind of providing metrics based on that. And we're trying to incentivize people to be as accurate as possible.
So this prediction mechanism is a way for people to gain notoriety by, flaunting their accuracy in winning bets, right? And
yeah,
then take this authority and maybe monetize it in some way and say, like, you know, I have a 99 percentile of like winning these bets, so I have a pretty good chance of winning my next bet, which means that other people who are in the particular betting market that I'm in, they can follow me and also bet the way I bet, and they could possibly like reap the same rewards that I reap.
Yeah, I think there's people trying to do that already on Instagram and TikTok, and you know, the thing that they're missing is that quantified piece that we provide. So because we actually track this and provide a rating, you know, we're like a third party almost in that sense, versus like, you know, yeah, I'm getting all my picks right, you should follow me, right? Like, no, we have all the data to kind of back that up.
Yeah. So you're not depending on someone's like just screenshot or whatever, like they could Photoshop it. You're depending on like actual data that people can provide to figure out if someone's telling the truth or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually like keep seeing it on Twitter and other places going around now that this guy made some 10-year Super Bowl prediction, and this was like, I think it was 6 years ago, and so far he's been right for 6 years, and he's got the I think the Bills for this year going into it, and so, but it's like, how do I know that that's not actually just some fake timestamp that the guy put on there, right? I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but it's, you know, it's out there, and I keep seeing it pop up, so you know, maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but we would actually be able to quantify that.
Yeah, that would be important, because, you know, you want to know the accuracy of what people are saying and if they're full of it or not. So horse races are pretty interesting, because, you know, like you have the horse, but you also have the jockey, right? And the jockey, like, depending on his skill, he can maximize performance out of like any horse that he takes. But also the horse, depending on how it's bred, it can be a really strong horse, you know, and just the jockey and the horse kind of like balance would be an interesting bet to place. How would that work? Like, would that work on your platform to be able to, you know, bet on the jockey and horse ratio type of thing?
Yeah, as long as there's, you know, some correlation stat we could find, like, you know, percentage of times jockey on this horse, what's his placement, and then do some math and calculate, you know, okay, every jockey with every horse, this is their correlation sentiment, and then you get a score out of that, and then we could place bets on that.
And is there a way for the user to just like create that scenario?
There is, and you know, we wouldn't just start with users doing whatever they want. So one of our key components is that in order to start offering that in our system down the line, you have to be a trusted user. That means you have to be providing accurate data on the confirmation side and not trying to manipulate markets, and, you know, making sure that you're behaving correctly in our system. And then we would open that up to bets of any type for those types of players. So because what I'm trying to get to is, how does a player create a new betting market? How does a player, like, suppose you want to bet on if like an apple is going to fall from the tree, and there's like a group of people standing around the tree, and it's an arbitrary bet, but, you know, how would that person go about, you know, placing these arbitrary bets? Yeah, so it's not super hard, actually. We have a system in the back end that you kind of enter in some basic information, like what we're betting on, what the rules are, who the contestants are. You know, apple will fall, apple will not fall, and, you know, by this time, and then it pops up in our system live, and then the other people around the apple tree can go on the app and start placing bets on either side.
Oh wow! So it's just that easy to just place bets on just random arbitrary things.
Yeah. I mean, it's fairly simple system. If we could pull up a demo, I'd love to show you, but we're on a podcast here, so it doesn't really fulfill it all.
Pull up a demo. I think you can share the screen if you want.
Oh, cool. All right. So, I'll give you an example. We are working with a company right now called WagerWire. They're like in the sports betting space adjacent too, and they are hosting some awards for the podcasts that they do. So they are having some awards like best, most supportive, best sports writer, best guest, best co-host. So I'll share my screen here and check it out. And I think you'll be able to kind of get a flavor for this here, where this is what it looks like. It's all themed and customized with the colors for WagerWire. They set all this up themselves. We gave them access to the back end. Evan and I kind of just gave them a quick tutorial on how it works, and they did all this. And so, they have all of their different guests that they've had. So, who is the most supportive guest? That's the win condition. We even have the full rules. And these are all people that they've had on their show and that they want to do this kind of internal fun betting game with. And so they're going to go, they got Twitter followers that they're engaging with, and so they'll be able to offer this to their followers for some rewards. One cool thing you see on the left, this is all with like the fake tokens, right? So yeah, they got fake money right now, doing these different bets. And one thing you can see is like we have an ability to confirm results. So I'll show you like in another example with our beta group here. We've done fun stuff like who's going to be the first person the Saturday Night Live host thanks at the end of the show, right? They always, every show, they like, thanks mom, dad, whatever. So fun bet that you could do. We have traditional things in here, like who's going to win Super Bowl at the end of the year for the NFL. And then, what's LeBron's next business going to do? Just, so we can do any sort of fun thing in here. And people can then come in and confirm the results themselves. So these are demos we've done in the past. We got stuff like what's going to be the most consumed beverage in the holidays. Let's see if we have one that haven't already clicked in the past. But yeah, in the World Cup semifinals, this already happened. So, Argentina. So now I confirm this event as a user, which is pretty cool. Now my data is getting captured, and this is good data, and I'll be ranked in our system here. So I guess the last cool thing I'll point out, and I mentioned we did some stuff in the past, like Bachelorette, is we've done things where there's leaderboards, and so all these players were playing every week to see, who could do the best bets on Bachelorette, whether it was, if someone's going to get a rose this week or if anyone's going to get slapped, and we had a bunch of fun things that we were doing. We do all the contest terms, all legalized, and so, in this case, we were giving away $150 for first place as a real money prize for the free-to-play game, and so we kind of handle all this, all the legal, all the regulatory, and make this work for really any type of group. Quick shout out to Kawia, who's one of our clients in Southern California. They're doing an NFL contest with us. This will be up live later today or tomorrow once the games are ready to get inputted. So hope that was nice. a cool demo for you.
That really helped me to understand like how the whole input works. This sounds very interesting as far as like taking advantage of updated regulations. Do you have any opinions on like, why the regulation was banned, or why gambling was banned on the federal level in the first place?
That one, probably just the kind of, it was taboo for a long time in society. As you mentioned at the beginning, gambling's not always looked on. It's a sin, right? At the end of the day, right? It's just like drinking, and like I mentioned, I think before, we've seen similar things with how cannabis spread across the U.S. here, and in some states now it's completely legal, and you just have to be over 18, right, or over 21, right? And so, I think perspectives are changing on life in general as technology and education advances, and our abilities to monitor this and make sure that there isn't anything, weird happening on either the consumer level, on like the, addiction level, and even, with the case, and I'm just going to throw out a Dodgers fan, right? The Astros cheated in the World Series at the most major level of sports possible. And you know what? People had bets on that. They lost their bets. So this can happen at any level. So I think, it's obviously a little still bitter as a Dodgers fan about that one, but I was at that Game 7 with my dad, and we got cheated out of winning a World Series because the Astros were cheating. So this happens at every level. So there's always concerns, but I think they're not big enough that we shouldn't be expanding and benefiting on the tax revenue. And at the end of the day, people are going to do this anyway, whether it's legal or not. So it seems almost silly to not take advantage of it and at least have the government get some taxes on it.
Yeah. I mean, if people are going to do it anyway, it might as well provide them with the technology to better facilitate it and at least play in the fair environment, which is important.
100%.
All right. Well, Evan and Aaron, thank you for joining me, and thank you for sharing about Sparket. And I like to leave my guests with the last word. You guys have last word for us?
Just open all your bets, come successful in 2023 here. Everything's a bet in life, whether you trip and fall walking down the stairs to actually gambling. So hope on all yours turn out well.
I hope you guys don't trip and fall walking down the stairs.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.